let's talk a bit more about the WMO, World Meteorological Organization. So, meteorological is weather. They started as a completely focused on weather, but because of weather changing so quickly under climate change, they do the state of the climate reports now. They're not just doing reports, they're trying to expand on some positive things, and they're stepping a bit out of their normal corners in their reports. For example, they're expanding something they call the life-saving early warning services.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Climate Emergency Forum. My name is Charles, and I'll be your host for today's program, Seasonal Climate Update Fall 2024. We're going to be discussing the World Meteorological Organization's Global Seasonal Climate Update for September, October, and November of this year, and we'll include a link in the description. This is a comprehensive update that provides a global overview of expected climate conditions. It provides detailed regional forecasts for the 6 WMO regional associations, which include Africa, Asia, South America, North America, Southwest Pacific, and Europe, with varying probabilities for temperature and rainfall anomalies in different areas. This update is a crucial tool for decision makers in various sectors, including agriculture, water management, energy, and disaster risk reduction, enabling them to plan and prepare for potential climate-related impacts. The report paints a picture of our planet's near future and demands our attention. Our world is poised to experience a dramatic shift in weather patterns, with weak La Nina conditions emerging and temperatures soaring across the globe. Now, if you don't know what a weak La Nina is, we have a video on the El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO for short, which we'll link in the description. Almost every land area will feel the heat of above normal temperatures, where rainfall patterns are drastically altered, affecting millions of lives from the equatorial Pacific to the heart of South America. This isn't science fiction. It's the reality we're facing in the coming months. As we delve into this report, we'll explore how these changes will reshape our environment, impact our communities, and challenge our way of life. From the parched lands of Central Asia to the potentially flood-prone regions of Southeast Asia, no corner of our planet remains untouched. The climate is definitely changing, and knowledge is our most powerful tool in facing what lies ahead. Peter, please share your insights about this report.
Thank you, Charles. Well, you're right. We are in a terrible, more than disastrous situation now all over the world. I don't have to repeat that. It's completely obvious, particularly from this year and last year. Last year, of course, 2023 was the big, huge record temperature increase. And it is shocking that 2024 will be another record temperature increase. And it looks like a large margin. No one expected this. 2023 was under an El Nino. Right now, we've got probably no El Nino left. So this WMO map, it looks all red. So it looks all, oh my God. But what it does is it only actually gives us the percentage likelihood of a temperature being above normal, as you said, okay? But I just want to stress that that's all it gives us. And then we've got the other map, which is on precipitation. So I'll just premise my address to these particular maps by saying that the Climate Reanalyzer 10-day forecast is absolutely awful. Everywhere that's under heat waves today is going to get worse, dramatically worse. So the WMO said that above normal temperatures are predicted under almost all land areas. And they said above normal sea surface temperatures are predicted over all ocean basins. And looking at the map, that does include the Arctic, which is pretty definite always. I took a look at the countries that are involved. It may sound a bit tiresome, but it's relevant for people who live there. So the worst affected region that I can see with respect to the probability of above normal temperature and the probability of below normal precipitation is again the Americas. This is very steady now. This is a very persistent situation. So the United States, the Caribbean, and almost all of South America. Now, you recall that we've had this huge change in the climate over the past 2 years, very pronounced this year. The Southern Hemisphere is heating up as badly, as fast as the Northern Hemisphere. That's a complete change in the climate system. Nobody expected that. So the most likely land areas include the Antarctic. And I should mention the Antarctic heat wave has not quite disappeared yet. So that's more than a record Antarctic heat temperature increase. So likely above temperatures, okay, all land areas. Now, most likely above normal temperatures are the United States, Quebec, Caribbean, South America, most of Africa, Madagascar, Mediterranean Europe, the southern part, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is always hot, but it's way hotter now. Saudi Arabia is being hit very badly by global warming. And Iran, Eastern China, Japan, Myanmar, Indonesia, the Philippines. There's a small region which is very significant, the central coastal region of Siberia, which is very high probability of being above normal. And that's pretty persistent too. Siberia is turned out to be very, very vulnerable to global warming. It's almost all high, which is terrible, of course, because that's where most of the permafrost is. There's a region in eastern China, which I mentioned, and northern Australia and New Zealand. And that is quite surprising because, of course, New Zealand is supposed to be, the last refuge from global warming, global heating. I just mentioned then the likelihood of below normal rainfall. USA, South America, I mentioned. Spain, of course. Southern Africa, a big region of Southern Africa. Somalia, again. Turkey, Saudi Arabia. Less rain than normal. And Iran and Afghanistan and Turkmenistan and Sichuan in China. So that's it on the below normal rainfall.
Thank you very much, Peter, for giving us that update and how the various areas are going to be affected. And now I'm going to hand it over to Paul. Paul, we're anxious to hear your perspective on all of this.
Yes, thank you, Charles, and thank you, Peter. You've done a good description of this WMO forecast. The maps are labeled SON 2024, which is September, October, November. And as Peter said, most areas are in the highest, warmer than normal situation, the red on the map. The notable exceptions are Alaska, parts of the equatorial Pacific, where the far eastern part of the equatorial Pacific is starting to show signs of maybe a very weak La Nina, and the far western side is showing still warmer than normal, and in the middle, it's kind of a neutral state. And of course, the ENSO patterns, as we pointed out in previous videos, have a huge impact on weather that is experienced on continents around the world. one of the things with the report is the baseline. I mean, they chose a weird baseline, 1993 to 2009. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but it's trying to just be sort of I think a quick and rapid update. Now, I want to go and look at some of the other WMO reports, because an accumulation of these types of forecasts, and then they look at what happened and compare the forecast to actuality, and then they compile all this information, and then they do a yearly report. So a 53-page report came out called State of the Global Climate 2023, and it came out March 19th of this year. And we've talked about it in some previous videos, but I just want to point out that, it's really the extensive, detailed document that shows how perilous life on this planet is becoming. And this is from a well-established organization. So, and of course, last year was the hottest year on record by a wide margin. And so I'll just go over some of the key points to remind people that they should really have a look at this document if they haven't. So global average temperature from six data sets, 6 different research groups, was 1.45 degrees Celsius warmer than normal. That's relative to an 1850 to 1900 baseline. We're not just breaking records by small amounts iteratively. We're actually crushing previous records. So the previous record, according to the WMO, was 1.29 degrees Celsius in 2016, and that beat 2020's of 1.27 degrees Celsius. So now we're 1.45. So we're just totally obliterating previous records. That's one key point. Why? Well, the greenhouse gases are at record high levels, and they're increasing. The greenhouse gas curves for CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide are bending upward. They're accelerating. They're going completely the opposite direction in spite of all the climate conferences and everything we've done. And the rate of climb is accelerating, and it's at record high levels. Ocean heat is, we've talked about the, importance of ocean heat on air temperature, et cetera. There's a lag. The ocean generally heats up first, and then the air temperature is warmer afterwards. So part of what the forecast for warmer temperatures is the record ocean heat. Like, since 1971, 90% of all global heating, of all energy stored on this planet in excess of normal, goes into heating the ocean, all different levels and layers of the ocean. There's parts, as Peter mentioned, the global south is on a tear in terms of heat. And part of it, the reason is that the Southern Ocean between 60 degrees south latitude and 35 south is extremely warm. And as a result of this warmth, we're getting record levels of global mean sea level rise. So sea level rise is accelerating at an incredible amount. So 1993 so look at 3 decades. So the last decade from today was 4.77 millimeters per year global sea level rise. The previous decade was 3.33, and the decade prior to that was 2.13 millimeters per year. So global sea level rise, like greenhouse gases, is accelerating 0.12 millimeters per year squared. It's like the acceleration of your car. And I'll stop there and let it go back to Peter. So I just want to say that the WMO reports, they're putting out lots of reports. I really like the detailed state of the climate reports. The one that we're talking about, it doesn't give updates on all of the climate parameters. It just talks about mostly air temperature, seawater temperature, and precipitation.
Thank you, Paul. So one of the interesting things about the report is they do have some rainfall predictions. They're saying below normal rainfall expected along the equator from 150 degrees east to southern Central America. Above normal rainfall probabilities for the maritime continent, parts of Africa, the Indian subcontinent, and Southeast Asia. Below normal rainfall likely for Central Asia and the Arabian Peninsula. most of South America has increased probabilities for below normal rainfall. There's weak enhancement of above normal rainfall from southern Central America to the Caribbean, and below normal rainfall probable in interior and southern North America west of 90 degrees west, as Peter had previously mentioned. So I'll mention something about the relevance of these reports. They provide a comprehensive overview and they're a decision-making tool. These updates serve a valuable resource for policymakers, planners, and decision makers across various sectors, as I mentioned previously. And they're also an early warning system by providing probabilistic forecasts of temperature and rainfall. The GSCUs act as an early warning system for potential climate anomalies or extreme weather events, allowing for proactive measures to mitigate risks. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to hand it back to Peter. Peter, what more would you like to share with us regarding the WMO reports and expanding broader than that as well?
I'd like to reinforce two things that Paul said, because these are very, very crucial realities right now, but the scientists aren't giving us really any indication of them. Paul mentioned that the unbelievably rapid accelerating increase in ocean heat, which is now phenomenal, is actually starting to feed back on us. He's quite right. That is starting to boost another boost of the global surface heating. The other thing is the greenhouse gas concentrations. That all three are accelerating. CO2 is the highest in 14 million years. It's increasing at an unprecedented rate in tens of millions of years. And just in the past few years, it's jumped right up in the rate of heating. So those two things are absolutely crucial to know in order to know that we have to mitigate right now. As the IPCC said in this recent sixth assessment, global emissions must be put into decline immediately. We're not getting that from the scientists either. So I did compare the WMO probability map with the sort of best climate reanalyzer forecast of what's going to happen in 10 days. It's absolutely shocking. The trend of heat waves that has been going on all through the year is going to continue. Now, the IPCC did say that it was certain that heat waves would get worse in the sense of they would start earlier and they would continue to last longer. So we're definitely into that. And they also said that the heat waves would increase in frequency and intensity. That is happening. Just take a look at South America, which is at the end of its winter now. The heat wave in South America has spread. It used to be Brazil and a few surrounding countries. Brazil is a huge country. This heat wave now will, and it's increasing sort of every few days, and in 10 days a week, it's going to affect 2/3 of the South American continent. So it's not surprising that the Amazon rainforest is burning like it's never burned before. The intensity of the Amazon burning, which we get from Copernicus, is the top level of fire heat intensity. So it's not only a vast region, and it's the worst in at least 20 years that the Brazilian authorities are saying. And about the same amount of South America is in drought. The drought maps, they're nightmarish. So if we just talk about South America, we are in a dire, dire, dire emergency. The other thing I should mention is that, the United States, the previous assessment and the model, the United States thought there wouldn't be any problem with temperature and drought for the rest of this century. That's what they thought for years and years and years. Well, of course, that's completely wrong. Look what's happened to the United States now. This summer has been another disastrous summer for the United States, over disastrous. I'm calling the situation superheating.
Thank you, Peter, for your insights on that. and that broader perspective on not only the global seasonal climate update, GSCU, but also other data that's out there. So, Paul, please continue with your information.
Yes, let's talk a bit more about the WMO, World Meteorological Organization. So meteorological is weather. They started as a completely focused on weather, but because of weather changing so quickly under climate change, they do the state of the climate reports now. They're not just doing reports, they're trying to expand on some positive things, and they're stepping a bit out of their normal corners in their reports. For example, they're expanding something they call the life-saving early warning services. So when there's weather extremes on the way, they're trying to figure out ways to get more messages to the public to save lives for extreme weather events. They also initiated something called the Global Greenhouse Gas Watch, GGW. They're looking at issues of climate finance, how much money is going to for adaptation and mitigation. There's whole sections in some of their reports and on their website as an organization. People often say, well, Montreal Protocol 1989 basically solved the ozone hole. Well, sorry to report, but the ozone hole has hit record high levels in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Its duration is as long as it's ever been, and it hit record levels of reduction of ozone, so therefore transmission of UV. It hit a record in 2023. And the reason is climate change this time. It's not CFCs. Climate change, of course, is warming the lower atmosphere, the troposphere, but less heat's going up to the stratosphere. So the stratosphere is cooling, and this makes conditions more favorable for ozone destruction. And also, the polar vortices that we're seeing are strengthening around Antarctica, and that's also contributing to the ozone hole. So we haven't solved the ozone issue, and the WMO is looking at that. They're also looking at food security. They're looking at population displacement and migration, and they're looking at the vulnerability, also movement of the vulnerability and how vulnerability are affected. So I'll just give some key figures. They're saying in pre-COVID, about 149 million people on the planet were food insecure. Now, or last year, it was greatly increased, 333 million people food insecure. We know about inflation. We know about inflation being double or triple with food prices that versus anything else. So we're getting a lot of people going into poverty and migrating. And the migration, just in the Middle East alone, it's about 3.4 million people internally having to migrate because they can't live where they used to be. Now, I want to close with a couple of good things that the WMO is pointing out. They talk about renewable energy. I much prefer the term sustainable energy. But in 2023, the worldwide implementation of renewable energy systems increased 50% versus the previous year, 2022. It increased by 510 gigawatts of power from renewables. In COP28, they pledged to triple the renewable energy by 2030 to 11,000 gigawatts being produced by renewables. That's triple would be from today of about 3,700 gigawatts. So an increase in 1 year of 510 is a significant chunk of the installed base. Now, it's still not displacing fossil fuels, but anyway, I think it's interesting that the WMO is taking a view outside of weather to climate and outside of climate to socioeconomic problems in their most detailed report. So I personally would like to see climate changing as quickly as it is. I like to see more of these WMO updates. I mean, their state of the climate is perfect. It covers everything. But, maybe every 3 or 4 months, talk about some of the key metrics to get the word out to people.
Paul, your insights about the ozone layer and how it's being affected is fascinating. So we thank Peter and Paul and you, our audience, for joining us here today. And if you learned something from this video, please consider liking the video. And if you haven't done so already, subscribing. And so we look forward to seeing you again on the next Climate Emergency Forum.